It's time to explore the conjugations and uses of poner and suponer. Previously, we left Joel at saber while we looked around at haber. Well, now Joel decides to go to poner, which is across the street from both of them. When Joel arrives at poner, he sees that Ner's young son is here, running the shop in Ner's absence. Joel tries to buy a chess piece from the boy, but when he looks at the item, he's horrified at how ugly the pawn looks. He says, "This chess piece looks like an orangutan with holes drilled all through it." It really does. It disgusts Joel and he wants to get rid of it. He decides to put it someplace where it won't be seen. He quietly says to himself, "I'll put this ugly pawn where ugly pawns go, in the trash." To say "I'm putting this here," he says, "Pongo esto aquí." The word pongo sounds kind of like pawn go, so you might say it when you're putting a pawn where pawns go. And pongo is how Joel says "I put" or "I'm putting." Other forms of poner in this room are pretty standard. The stress syllable pon applies to pone, pones, and ponen. In the shelves, Ner allows a cat named Puss to knock over the merchandise and play with the chess pieces. The most common past tense forms of poner are puse, for I put, and puso, for he, she, or it put. The pus here may sound strange, but it's actually similar to the stores across the street. Compare puse and puso with pude and pudo in poder. As an example, "he put it there yesterday" is lo puso ahí ayer. In poner's backyard, some chess pieces float in a pool of mud. The subjunctive of poner is ponga, based on pongo. This is another pattern that you should get used to. We've learned several verbs that have a rogue letter G in the first person, such as tengo and hago. For each of these verbs, the G comes back in the backyard subjunctive form as well. For example, tengo turns into tenga, hago turns into haga, and pongo turns into ponga. Any verb that has a G like this in the first person will also have a G in the subjunctive. Poner's imperative is also very commonly used. Remember that imperatives like vete and ten and as are always stored on the moving sidewalk beside the store. As Joel leaves poner, a man shouts to him, "Hey, buy my pawn. Don't buy from Ner. My pawns are cheaper because they're pawned second-hand." This poor fellow is putting muddy chess pieces from the backyard on the conveyor belt next to the store, hoping that this will catch people's attention so that he can sell these dirty items at a discount price. The word here is simply pon, and it's an order, and it means put. For example, "put that here" would be pon eso aquí. Very often, the reflexive imperative is used. Put yourself. As an example, "put yourself in contact with him" is ponte en contact con él. Joel isn't interested in these muddy chess pieces, but something else catches his attention when he looks back. Ner's son is on the rooftop of poner, trying to perform the chess trick that the poner store is famous for. Remember, these chess pieces can magically get stuck to chessboards if the trick is performed correctly. Ner's son shouts the magic word, presto. But he's very young and can't pronounce his R's, so it sounds like puesto. This is poner's participle. For example, "he has put it here" is lo ha puesto aquí. We just now breezed through these forms of poner, so if you have a moment, I recommend sitting down and trying to sketch out a diagram of all the conjugations to make sure you can remember them. Now let's talk about why poner is such a common verb. Poner doesn't just mean put. It's used in many idioms that can mean some pretty strange things. For example, if you want to set one person against another person, making them enemies of each other, you might poner them en su contra. That would literally be put them in their against. So, for example, he was able to set them against him would be los pudo poner en su contra. Poner is very commonly used reflexively, and this can mean several things. One easy way to think of it is that ponerse refers to getting a certain way. For example, you might get yourself to a place or to an attitude. Get over here, as an informal order, might be ponte aquí. They got happy might be se pusieron felices. Normally, ponerse is used to indicate that someone is doing something actively. For example, you might get thinking or put yourself to thinking, as they say in Spanish. He set himself to think would be se puso to think. I'm getting thinking is me pongo to think. Like many other verbs, poner is used in an extreme variety of ways, and it's good to learn different uses as you encounter them. As Joel leaves poner, he glances at the soup kitchen next door. The funny thing about suponer is that it's conjugated exactly the same way that poner is. So if you can remember each conjugation of poner, you can remember everything about suponer. So we won't actually visit suponer. Instead, let's quickly do a review of all the conjugations of poner, and then we'll add sup at the beginning. So here are the conjugations that we learned from poner. See if you can remember each scene of poner as we go through these. Pongo in poner turns into supongo for suponer. Pone turns into supone. Puse turns into supuse. Puso turns into supuso. For the subjunctive, ponga turns into suponga. The imperative, pon, turns into supon. The participle, puesto, turns into supuesto. Again, since poner and suponer are completely identical in their conjugations, we aren't even going to look inside suponer. Joel never goes there because he associates soup kitchens with poverty, which he doesn't like. In other words, we don't need any of the conjugation mnemonics for suponer. We also won't worry about the meanings of all of the suponer conjugations. Just remember in general that the infinitive, suponer, means to suppose or to guess. Here's just one sentence example. I suppose so. So suponer is usually followed by que, and this would be I suppose that yes, or supongo que sí. As a variation on this, I suppose that they're around. Supongo que están por ahí. Forms other than supongo are actually pretty rare, except that the participle, supuesto, is used in a common idiom. The phrase por supuesto, which literally means by supposed or by supposition, is often used to say, of course. So just remember that. Por supuesto. Now I mentioned something earlier about puso and puse, and how they're similar to pudo and pude from poder. There's an interesting abstract connection between all of the businesses in this neighborhood: haber, saber, poder, suponer, and poner. The preterite tense always has a strange letter U or U in it. So from haber we had hubo, in poder we had pudo, and in poner we had puso. The path between these buildings is a trench that's shaped like the letter U. This path is what ties all 5 of these buildings together. The designer of Yol decided that these stores belong together because of the U in their preterite tenses. This is not trivia. These types of connections will become more and more important throughout the rest of your Spanish learning. So we've just explored the part of the neighborhood that has the U-shaped trench. But now let's turn around and go back to the fork in the road between hacer and haber. And let's explore the businesses on the hacer side.